Hey guys, Fryer guy back. So we're going to another call here, and we're actually going to a fryer. I know I'm a fryer guy, but I do work on more things than just fryers. Anyways, this fryer call is stating that it gets the temperature, but it doesn't hold temperature while they are cooking. Now that can be anything really. It could be that it gets the temperature and, you know, the first thing in the morning, and then if they don't stir the oil, remove the cold spot, it stops, you know, or it just drops temperature too quickly. It could be the high limit trips in the middle of the cook cycle, or it could be that it does heat, but it's not heating or recovering fast enough, which indicates that we could have a broken wire off an element or a bad contactor or something along those lines. So we're gonna find out exactly what it is when we get to the store. All right, guys, we're here working on a GEF-720. Look at that new beast right over there. I've never seen one of those yet, but I'm sure it's similar. Now, the complaint is it'll get hot, but while they cook, it does not stay hot. So we're gonna figure out what's going on before it's already unplugged. Before we get started, I'm gonna take the back off. We're gonna check, make sure the wires aren't burning off the elements and everything else. Then we'll plug it in and then go through the testing process if that's not the case. One of the first things I always do is, if I hear that, I always check the wires off the element. If this, some of the older models will have wires come off the contactor to an element. Sometimes the newer ones now, the wires are permanently attached to the element, so we'll see what goes on. All right, you can see the back of the fryer is usually pretty nasty. It is what it is. Get some paper towels, clean it up. Down here, you generally have 2 screws you gotta remove. Already removed them. Now I gotta peel this bad boy off. All right, so here's the inside of the fryer. What we're doing now is I'm looking to make sure none of these wires here on the elements are broken off or burnt off. And by the looks of it, they're all good. Check your contactors, make sure the wires aren't broken or anything like that. Same thing on top of this contactor. Right here they have a breaker. Sometimes what can happen is on the back side of this breaker, the wires will burn off. And in this case here, that's exactly what happens. There's a wire burned off the breaker. If I can kind of get you guys to see it. Wire burnt off the breaker there and shorted out. So what was happening was one of the elements wasn't getting a leg of power. So what we got to go ahead and do is replace that. Now this one here is looking pretty rough, but it could just because that shorted out and blew. You know, so they're all looking like that. I think what happens is it sparked and just bashed a little bit. So sorry for the bad tight videos, because you see there's the wire broken off. The other ones, they're starting to burn up a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and get this fixed, and we'll go to that next route next. So one of the other problems I ran into, I noticed, is that this wire came right off. So what I did is I disconnected the breaker here. You can see it's got 2 screws on the bottom, 2 on the top. And I came off of one of these actual terminal connectors right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and have to repair that wire. I went ahead and already attached the new wire, or the new repair right there. As you can see, it's this one right here where my thumb is next to. I went ahead and reattached that using high temp wire or a high temp connector. You can, on these here, you can use regular connectors, you know, terminal connectors that are the yellow colored ones, and those would be all right because this is not really next to heat. If you're doing it onto the elements, they need to be high temp connectors or they'll just burn off. So I got to repair that. That just came out. That probably wasn't crimped on very well from the manufacturer, so I got to repair that. But one of the reasons those will burn off is either it's drawing too many amps at the element and you're going to have a bad element, or the wire itself is going bad and it's getting weak and brittle due to constant you know, heating and cooling. So in this case, the wire that I trimmed, stripped, and put the new connection on, it was still really good. It still had a good brass color or copper color to it. So I'm not too concerned about that. This one here, I can see it looks like it heated up a little bit at the tip. I might have to cut. You see it's kind of grayish green, and you can see it's discolored here. I may have to cut and see what it looks like back here towards where it's red, and see how it looks then. Something I want to point out, when crimping these new connectors on, this one here, I actually ran out of high temp connectors, so this one's going to use. You don't want to crimp up here. You want to crimp down here with your wire crimpers. If it is, sorry about my hand in the way. These are your wire crimpers. Don't use the wire stripper things you get, which is a stripper, crimper, and one. I mean, maybe if you're starting out, it's fine. This is what you're gonna want to use. This part up here is for insulated, which that's insulated. And down here, this one down here is for non-insulated. So make sure you use the right ones and make sure you get them good and crimped, because if they're not tight, crimped properly, this one I haven't crimped down yet. If you don't crimp them down properly, what's going to happen is they'll be loose and it can burn the wire off because it's pulling too many amps because it doesn't have a good connection. So make sure you do that properly. Okay, so it's been reconnected. Now I meant to mention, these little nuts here on these studs, they're 8 millimeters. So make sure you get an 8 millimeter wrench or socket. That way you can remove it and not use like pliers or adjustable wrench. Now I got all hooked up. Now we're gonna go ahead and give this bad boy a test. All right, so it's plugged in, turn it on, see it's hold. It should cook. I make sure there's oil in the fryer, it's shortening. Now we test it. Orange light turns on, which shows that it's definitely heating. One thing we're gonna make sure is it's not gonna have the red light kick on, which is gonna stop it from heating. So one of the things to do is to check your current temperature is push the temperature button, push and hold at your set point, and it'll show actual, and there we go. It won't stay there, it'll come out, but we wanna make sure it does rise. When it first turns on, it takes a little bit for it to heat up, but we're gonna make sure it does heat up, so. Another thing you guys always do is you can see the oil starting to churn a little bit. That shows it's also heating, but what we're going to do next is make sure that all the wires going to the elements have got amp draw going through them, so make sure how much current is flowing through. So we're going to go back to the back of the fryer and test our amp draws. Alright, I have it set to amp draws here. Now my meter's a little broken, I got to get a new one, but it still works, so what we want to do is make sure we're getting a good amp. Now, the reason why you want to make sure your meter is still good is so that way you can close it properly without touching the wires or shocking yourself. You just clamp around a wire, and then we'll get an amp reading. Can't really do this with one hand. There you go. We're at 32.5, that's just good. And we're going to do that all the way across on all the wires. Alright, so I went ahead and amp draw across all the wires attached to the elements there. You don't really have to do all 6 wires. You can just do 1 wire for each element and it just still give you 32, 33 amps. As long as you're around there, 32.5, 33, 32.0, you're gonna be good with your amp draw. So now we're just gonna let it get up to temperature and then we'll test everything else out from there. All right, I wanna show you guys something. We are actually at temp. It says ready, right? So set point is, our expert point is 351. You need to make sure you stir the oil, right? Because these oils have, these fryers have cold spots right dead smack in the middle. And it will drop that temperature big time. You see it's dropping down drastically, right? It went from 351 to 315 and lower. Let's see what happens. So we're at 314, so 313. So imagine now, when you are testing these things, there's that cold spot. You have to stir. That's why it tells you when it's done. The alarm will go off and it'll say stir. You got to stir to get rid of that cold spot to evenly warm the oil up. So you see it's still dropping a little bit. So it dropped, what, 40 degrees? So make sure you stir the oil and then afterwards have them test it out by cooking. One of the other problems they had is this thing was leaking, they were saying. You can see the drops already. The bottom hose here, it's gonna be hard to see, is actually dripping in the back, which I don't think you can see, and a little bit in the front, you can see it dripping down there. So we gotta go ahead and replace that bottom hose. Hey guys, so there we go. We fixed the leak problem, went ahead and also got the heating issue taken care of. So with that, hopefully this will help you guys out. Now, one thing I did want to mention is some people may ask, and I want to avoid that question right now, is why did I not plug it in first and test voltage and all other stuff first? Well, the biggest reason being is that I cannot tell you how many times I have done that, and then boom, it sparks or pops or something like that. So just to avoid that, I always start with a visual inspection first. So if you ever got some problem where it's not heating properly, do a visual inspection first. Check the wires and the connections, make sure they're not burnt off. You'd be surprised how that is a very common problem. So once that's all connected, I make sure none of the wires are touching each other, none of the terminals are touching, and then I plug it in and test it from there. So in this case, we got lucky and had a leak from a bad hose. Went ahead and replaced the hose, it no longer leaks. I didn't need to show you that. So with that, guys, hopefully this helped you out. If you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button down below. And if you got any questions or comments, leave a comment in the comment section down below, and we'll try to answer them. So I will see you guys on the next video.